Hey folks, Father Krishna of the Saturn Junkyard here. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my Saturn relationship. It's been going on for a number of years. I don't really think I acquitted myself very well in the Titan cast when I was trying to explain the three stages of my relationship with the Saturn, so I'll try and explain it a little bit now. Started off in 1996, 97, 98, mid to late 90s when I bought my first Saturn. I was a Mega Drive user. Used to play games which were sort of classic Mega Drive games, Golden Axe and Shinobi and a few of those type of games. But mainly, I used to play golf competitively against my friends. That was the main video game, believe it or not, that we used to play. You could play it whilst having a drink, basically, I think was the main pull of that game. And eventually my Mega Drive broke. So what led me to the Saturn was the desire to carry on playing golf on a Sega machine. So the Saturn was what was the current Sega console at the time, 1996. And I think it was this very game here, PGA Tour 97, that led me to the Saturn. I think that was the game that I went to buy. So I argued with the salesman who wanted to sell me a PlayStation, but eventually came out with the Saturn and Sega Rally, which I've talked a lot about, so I won't bore you with that, and this title here. And I think it was Virtua Fighter 2, not this copy. Obviously, this came from Blockbuster. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But it was, I think, Virtua Fighter 2 and Sega Rally. They were the bundled games with the console. So I walked out of the shop with Sega Rally, PJ Golf, and Virtua Fighter 2. Now, the next two purchases that I got were these two. Virtua Cop 1 and 2. I think I'd seen it in the arcade, and I definitely knew it was an arcade style game, and I thought it was amazing, graphically amazing, gameplay amazing. I didn't have a light gun, I didn't even know about the stunner at that point. I simply had my Saturn pad, which I used to play Virtua Cop 1, Virtua Cop 2 very happily. Had no idea, in fact, that you could buy a light gun and sit in your house shooting at the TV, didn't realise that. So I played with the pad, absolutely loved it. It didn't bother me at all. And then the other games that I had, I guess this one would be the next most significant game, Panzer Dragoon. Okay, and Panzer Dragoon was not a game that I bought because I read about it or because I wanted it or because I knew about, shooters or anything like that. It was simply what was in the store at the time. And I loved Panzer Dragoon. I played it, but I never completed it. That wasn't really something that I was bothered about at the time. I never had a memory card or even a battery in the back of my Saturn, so I never had any saves. So every time I played a game, it was sort of from scratch, which led me sometimes to play games for hours on end and to leave the Saturn running, believe it or not, so that I could, save my progress in a game without losing it. And I actually left the Saturn on for days, which probably explains why my first one eventually gave up the ghost. But hey, excuse me. Another game that simply was there, so I ended up getting it, was Clockwork Knight. Now this is the quintessential 2D platformer for the Saturn. It looks amazing. I still think it's one of the best looking games on the Saturn, and it's certainly one of the most unusual and unique and original platformers that you can get, and I loved that, and I sunk hours into it without ever completing it. Hey, pattern there. And finally, it's what Sam would call the sleeper. This is perhaps my favourite Saturn experience from my first sort of time with it in the 90s, and it's Casper. And I speak a little bit about this on the next podcast, so I'm not going to say too much about that, other than it's an amazing game. It's one of the very few games that I own for the PlayStation and for the Saturn as well, because I just had to have it on all consoles. When I didn't have my Saturn running, I was able to play the PS1 copy on my PS3, so it's a game that I absolutely love. Okay, so that's stage one. Then there was stage two. That was 1996, 97, 98. By the time 98 rolled around, we bought a PlayStation, and can't say too much about that, but we missed the Dreamcast entirely. And it wasn't until I got into the Dreamcast in 2004 and started writing for the Dreamcast Junkyard 2006 that I thought about the Saturn again. And I wanted very much to have my own blog. I wanted to have the chance to write my own articles like I did on the Dreamcast Junkyard, but I wanted my place. So I asked Tom, the founder of the Dreamcast Junkyard, if he'd have any objection to me doing a Saturn site called the Saturn Junkyard, and being the generous type of guy he is, he said that was fine. And so I started doing the Saturn Junkyard. And even though I was doing the Saturn Junkyard, I actually wasn't playing too much Saturn at that point. I would play games to review them, and I'd buy games so I could have things to review. It was around the time of Blockbuster's buy one, get one free. Now, I was obsessed in about the same time with the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast was my super console of choice. So the Saturn really was secondary. Now, at the time, Blockbuster Video had game station stores within Blockbuster. So you could go, you could get retro games, you could sell your games, exchange your games, and so on. Dreamcast games were going for about £2.50 each. And they had this offer called Bog Off, and buy one, get one free. Now I'm going to show you the sticker for that, because so many of my games have got this sticker on. There's the game station price, £2.99, so peanuts basically. And there's the buy one, get one free. So if this was £2.99, and then you got another title, one of them would be free. Whichever one was the cheapest, you'd get free. So you could get some absolutely fantastic bargains. And I bought up loads and loads of Saturn games. And some of them were absolute classics. And so from 2006, around that time, is when I got into Worldwide Soccer. And I got into Worldwide Soccer because of the Dreamcast title, Worldwide Soccer 2000 Euro Edition. And then I decided I would get the Saturn version. This one, 99p. I think my cheapest was the the Worldwide Soccer 97, which I got for 20p. So that's like, you know, you can't get anything for 20p, but I got a really decent video game. And 97 is actually better than 98, but I digress. I also expanded my golf range with the fabulous Craig Stadler influenced Pebble Beach links, and I bought some absolutely classic games at that time. Daytona. I've not got my entire collection here, I've just got a few that I'm talking about. Excuse me. Daytona. I needed another driving game. I'd played Sega Rally to death. Daytona was, I think, Tom Charnock from the Dreamcast Junkyard's favourite. So I got that, loved it. Fighters Mega Mix. If there's one thing that I really didn't describe well on the podcast, it was this wonderful game with all of its fabulous extra characters. Characters like, not superhero, which is what I said on the podcast, Rent-A-Hero. Characters like Candy. Characters like the Hornet from Daytona. Characters from Virtua Cop. Characters from Fighter Mega Mix. It's just absolutely superb. The Virtua Fighter kids make an appearance on here as well. It's just, it's I guess as close as we get in Sega to a Smash Brothers game, but absolutely loved that. And I remember playing that in my caravan. We took the Saturn to my caravan in Wales, and I was going to leave it there as the caravan console. We didn't want to keep hawking consoles back and forth. So at that point, 2006, when we bought Fighters Mega Mix, I remember playing a lot of that on holiday with the kids at the caravan. Great times. I also got this at that time, my first ever 2D fighter. Okay, I bought that because I'd played the arcade version and because I loved Marvel, not because I loved 2D fighters. I thought they were crap. But I bought that and actually realised that, yeah, it wasn't actually bad, and it was quite good. And at the same time, or a similar time, I bought that. So there you go. That's my sort of introduction to Capcom Brawlers, introduction to 2D fighters. I don't really think you could get a better example than Street Fighter Alpha. So yeah, so that was that time. This is when I also bought the most expensive Saturn game that I'd heard of at the time. And this, at the time when Saturn games were going for 99p and 20p. Excuse me. House of the Dead. £25. And I paid that because I was a fan of the Dreamcast House of the Dead too. And it's fabulous. And if you get the light gun, it's amazing, and I think it was the first game that I actually bought a light gun and played a proper shooting Saturn experience with, so absolutely amazing. Now at the same time, that's just the games falling over, at the same time, because games were so cheap, I bought a load of things that I just never even got out the box. I actually, unfortunately, did get this one out of the box and play it. Virtual Highlight, shockingly bad. I was going to use this as an example of something that was shockingly bad. I actually played it last night. It's not as bad as I thought, but it's another one that was bought and left on the shelf for ages. I'm going to just show you a couple more. Zombie 1, FIFA Soccer 96, All-Star Hockey 98, never played. Mansion of Hidden Souls, wish I'd never played. And I also at that time picked up this, which at the time I thought was absolutely awful. I think if you go onto the Saturn Junkyard blog, you'll see me reviewing that and saying how much I hated it. That certainly changed with time. But I also bought games that were fabulous that I never played until this last year, just gone, 2017. That just sat on my shelves. I thought it was a puzzle game, it was rubbish. Absolutely brilliant, one of the best games that I found for the Saturn last year. And then here's another one that I bought and hadn't really played till 2017. So this was bought in 2007 or 2008. The old buy one get one free, $2.99. I was just buying them when I went in for Dreamcast games, which I did play. I'd just pick up a few Saturn ones if they were there, and wrote about them and really enjoyed doing the blog, the Saturn Junkyard. But it was always second place to the Dreamcast at that point. In terms of my playing and in terms of my interest, it was always second fiddle to the Dreamcast. And I actually got some great games that I'm only just really discovering now. This week's challenge. How about this? I played this recently. I thought it was absolutely amazing. I hadn't played it till 2017. And the same with this, and you'll see. Command and Conquer, £2.99. You pay a bit more for that nowadays, I can tell you. Okay, so around that time as well, I got this. And this kind of opened up my Saturn world because, number one, very important, it allowed me to save games. Finally had a memory manager, I could save games. It also allowed me to play Japanese imports. And I remember the first Japanese import I ever got, which was at the tail end of the 2007, 2008, something like that. And it was this, and if you look really close, it says Special Jizz Edition. So it's Vampire Savior, fabulous 2D Capcom game. This came to me through the post. I think it might have been from Jess Arugulas. I can't actually remember. It's a bit of a sketchy time for me back then. Anyway, that came, and inside this allowed me to play that. So this was my first import, and I loved it. Inside the game was this. Okay, CDR, burnt disc with the words Radiant Silvergun. Now, I'd heard about Radiant Silvergun at this point. I'd never played a shmup, but I heard about it. I had no way of knowing how I would get this to play on my Saturn. I think there was something called the swap trick at the time. Excuse me. I'm not technical enough to do anything like that, so it was useless, and it sat in my house for about 10 years. We'll get back to that in a minute. Okay, I also, now that I could play Japanese games, began to sort of send off for a few. Play Asia, I think, was the place I got. I got Burning Rangers. Again, kind of bought it, but never really played it. Dead or Alive, which, again, was a Dreamcast favourite of mine, so I wanted to check out the Saturn, and I found it was actually perhaps even better than Virtua Fighter. And I decided to get some more games. I ended up buying Virtua Fighter Knights, the proper game of Knights. Oh, didn't mention that one of my original Saturn games was Christmas Nights. I'll get back to that in a bit. But I bought like Last Bronx, I bought Marvel Superheroes, and I bought quite a few import games at the time, and a few weird ones as well. The Namia Moro Dance Mega Mix game was one of them. Strange games that you wouldn't really want to play. I don't actually know what I've done with it. But yeah, I bought some strange imports. Oh, of course, the Sega Saturn game. I bought that. That was one. Oh, here they are. So I got Savaki, weird fighting game. I got Virtua Fighter Kids, big-headed game, which I actually loved because you can collect these in Shenmue. So it blew me away that there was an actual game of it. And there she is, the beautiful Namia Moro. This is like the cheesiest, weirdest Japanese game with J-pop singers and whatever. I don't even understand it, but I liked it and I liked her. I got some fabulous games though. Perhaps the best looking game on the Saturn, maybe. Another one, which is one of the very only games that I've got for the PlayStation and the Saturn as well. Wipeout, amazing. And then again, hidden gems that I actually didn't play properly until about a year ago or so. I'm just going to move these before I have an avalanche. Okay, all right. So, there are still a few hidden gems. This is something I'm not very familiar with. It's the closest the Saturn gets to Mario Kart. So I'm going to explore these games that I didn't know. I've got loads of them on my shelf still. And then personal things happened. I got very unwell, stopped blogging. The Junkyard carried on with Nuno and Arugulas, and a few other people kept it open. And I stopped contributing to it. My Saturn ended up in the loft. My games ended up in the loft. I ended up just playing Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, and kind of left retro gaming behind until last year. And then we get to stage 3 of my relationship with the Saturn. And stage 3 is about more imports, hearing about more imports. It's about starting up the Saturn Junkyard blog again. It's about starting the Facebook group, which is now nearly up to 1,000 members. And stage 3 is the stage that we're in now, and it's the most passionate I've felt about the Saturn. I've started buying immense amounts of Saturn software, even immense amounts of Saturn hardware. I've now got a grey Japanese Saturn, a white Japanese Saturn. I've got a JVC Victor Saturn. I've got a PAL Saturn. In fact, I've got 2 PAL Saturns, one with a 5060 AC mod. So I'm in a bit of a Saturn passion at the moment. And I'm just going to tell you about what's important to me this time. And what's happened this time, and I have to thank the current Saturn community and John Lee. I got myself a different action replay. The one I showed you a moment ago, this one. Kay Kona tells me this isn't even a real action replay. It's really stiff when you put it in the cart slot of your Saturn. So I needed another one. And John Lee offered to mod it and put the pseudo Saturn mod onto that, which he did. I just sent it down to him and he sent it back to me. And he sent me this. Okay. Doesn't look very fabulous, does it? But you'll see there it says disc 1 of Police Notes, the right way up. Disc 1 of Police Notes. And in there, in that little tub of CDRs, are some of the most rare, expensive, classic Saturn games available. And it was John that sort of gave me a stack of them and my modded action replay and said, there you go. And he opened up the Saturn to me in a way that just I hadn't had any opportunity. I was able at last to play my Radiant Silvergun that I'd had for about 10 years. And if you haven't got a pseudo Saturn mod action replay card, you've got to get one, because it then allows you to play copies of games, repro games. Now, if you're going to buy something like this, okay, if you're going to go and buy that, a PAL version of that, it's going to cost you hundreds of pounds. And the joy of having a pseudo Saturn is that these aren't real games, they're discs, just copy discs made for me by the lovely Daniel Turner. And one of the great things about this phase of the Saturn Junkyard is how kind and generous everybody is, and people can't do enough for each other, it seems. giving each other bits of software, bits of hardware, making games for people. You know, there's just a beautiful thing going on the Junkyard Facebook page. The community is amazing. So Daniel, one of our very first admins, sent me a big stack of 2D fighters, shmups, which are, there's loads of them in there as well, and some classic games that are expensive. So for example, thanks to John and Daniel, I've got Deep Fear, Panzer Dragoon Saga, all the Parodius games, the game Paradise, things that I'd seen on Metal Jesus and things that I'd seen on Adam Korolik and GameSat. Games that I really wanted, all of a sudden in one big bundle I've got. So I've got so many games. I've got all of the games that I bought in the 96 time. I've got all of the games, many that I haven't shown you or talked about today. I've got them upstairs ready to play. Some games, for example, like the Hockey 98, I never even got out the box yet. And some complete and utter dark horses that, I mean, I just hadn't played that till about a few weeks ago. Found it really difficult, and then found it really intriguing, and then found it really excellent. So thank you, David Lee, for your tutorial on that. But the world of the Saturn for me has opened up, and there are some very important people that I haven't mentioned yet, so I'm going to talk about them now. One is Brian, who was the first new person to get on board. Nuno's been around for a long time, so Brian was the first person, Brian Vines, and Samuel Miles. And those are the guys, Nuno, Samuel and Brian. They're the podcast crew. They're the main core guys that have made the Saturn Junkyard go from just a blog and a Facebook page into a YouTube channel with videos, into a podcast channel that now has different podcasts going out. So those three guys, Nuno, Sam and Brian, elevated the Junkyard. They elevated it to a multimedia operation instead of just a blog and a Facebook page, and for that I'll be eternally grateful. Last thing, I mentioned the Pseudo Saturn, and I mentioned the fact that it opens up the world of gaming for you to get some blank games, some copied games, and those copies can look like the real thing to a certain extent, but then we go to the next level, and the next level for me, and something that is absolutely blowing me away at the moment about the Saturn scene, is the repro scene. And repro is where you get a game which isn't made by the company, the original publisher, so it's a copy, but it's more than that. A repro game doesn't just copy the disc. I mean, that's a blank disc, that's a copy of a game, right? But a repro game gives you the full deal. Now, I did say that one of the games that was big for me back in the first phase of Saturn Love was Christmas Nights. Christmas Nights came as a free game with official Sega Saturn magazine, and it came in a little cardboard case, paper case, that is easily damaged, not very exciting, and it doesn't look great. Now, at this point, I find out about the repro scene. And the first person that I knew of that did things, made boxes and discs, was Ben Boyd. And Ben is the first repro artist I ever came into contact with. Lovely guy, amazing talent, makes some outrageously good stuff. And this is the box and manual that he made me for Nights. Now, it's in a second generation hard plastic box. I supplied the box, he supplied the insert. I can't tell you how blown away by this stuff I am. I can't tell you how amazing it is for me to have this beautiful, beautiful box to house my Christmas Nights in. But it goes further than that. Here's the original paper sleeve. I forgot I'd put that in there. Okay, so that's the, you know, it's fine. It's all right. It did the trick for 10 years or so, or 20 years, whatever it is. There's the disc. So that's what I had originally, and then Ben sent me the insert, but also this, and this is, I think, just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. A full colour manual. It just blows me away. It really, really does. So that's Ben's work, and I'm going to show you his copy of Police Notes. He sent me a Police Notes, which again, it's not actually for this box. It should be the outside of a cardboard sleeve, but I sneaked it into there. You can see the gold, I hope, shining. It's black and gold. It's absolutely gorgeous. Any marks you can see are on the case, not on Ben's work. So that's some of Ben's work, and then I've already done a video about this earlier, but this is work by Marvin Macias, and he has done me KO Flying Squadron 2. And it's just the quality. I mean, it's not just the box. Ben gave me the box, but Marvin actually does the discs as well for his company, which is called Nightwing Video Game Reproductions, and I suggest you look them up on Google and get some, because they do the discs as well. It's great to have this. That'll play you the game, right? And a fine game it is too. But look how much nicer that is. And this is what's exciting me, I guess, at the moment, is the repro scene. The fact that with a pseudo Saturn cart, you can have access to every single experience on the Saturn. Some vaporware, thank you to Kate Kona, he's been putting out games that were never published. They've found the files, they've made them into games that you can download, and so we're now actually getting to experience some of the vaporware that never actually came out for the Saturn. And my hope is that the community grows, that the interest in the console grows. My massive aspiration for this period would be for some homebrew or new games to be developed and brought out commercially. The Dreamcast at the moment, I think it had 15 games come out in 2017. If one game came out in 2019, I'd be ecstatic. A new game for the Saturn would be amazing. However, as you've seen, I've got hundreds of games that I need to play. I've got games that I've sat on my shelf for years without me ever touching. And I just think at the moment, it's a brilliant time to be a Saturn owner. It's a brilliant time to be involved in this scene. The interest seems to be peaking. The prices are going up and up and up. So if, like me, you invested heavily in software 10 years ago, you got a few bargains because nowadays games can go for a lot of money. Anyway, before anyone bursts in and ruins my third attempt at this video, I'm going to sign off and just say thank you for listening. I hope I haven't bored you, and this is Father K signing off, and see you next time. Cheers.